you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and thank you to our witnesses for being here to testify and for your efforts to address the crisis in Yemen, which has truly taken a horrific toll on millions of innocent men and women there, and particularly children. I'm disappointed that the Senate has not yet made a decisive statement about the need to influence Saudi-led operations and to protect those innocent civilians in Yemen. I think it's long past time we send a message to the leadership of Saudi Arabia that we have high expectations for our allies, particularly those who are receiving military support. So, Ambassador Satterfield, do you believe that the Saudi-led coalition is engaged in urgent and good faith efforts to negotiate an end to the civil war in Yemen?
Senator, the Saudi-led coalition, primarily Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, accept at the highest levels the proposition that there is only ultimately a political solution to this conflict, and that was reiterated most recently by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman during his visits here in Washington. We operationally tried to implement that rhetorical understanding in terms of the active support which the UN needs from both the Emirates and the Saudis for their mission to be successful. Now, over the course of the past 6 months, from a crisis point in October, November, when things looked very dark indeed, we have indeed seen a more receptive approach by the Saudis, by the Emiratis certainly, to this concept of supporting, genuinely supporting and facilitating the UN's mediating efforts. Yes.
Mr. Jenkins, you talked about pledges, I think you said from the UAE and the Saudis. Did you mention anyone else? Of $1 billion in aid. Has any of that aid actually been forthcoming to date?
So on April 3rd in Geneva was a pledging conference where over $2 billion was pledged against the $3 billion that the United Nations is looking for this year. Of that, Saudi Arabia and UAE pledged $920 million, and as of this week, all of that has arrived within the bank accounts of the United Nations, which we're very happy to see. Kuwait also pledged a significant amount, as well as the UK and the EU. All of this is very heartening for us as we look at the vast needs to see that now, with all the pledges when they come in, that's 2/3 of the appeal. This long into the year, that's very heartening. However, there's going to continue to be great need and need for more assistance.
How long is it going to take to get that aid out into the field so it's helping people?
So we're very thankful, particularly because the Saudis and the Emirates have provided all of this money to the United Nations Office of the Coordinator of Humanitarian Assistance, UN OCHA. UN OCHA is now going to disperse it among the various UN agencies, which they'll do very, very quickly.
You all talked about the importance of a political solution in Yemen as being the ultimate goal. Houthis needing to be part of any negotiation. Who else needs to be at the table in order for a political solution to really work?
Yemen's situation is one of the most complex in terms of the numbers of parties, sub-parties, and then fundamental internal divisions, the South, the North, the legacy of the 93 forced reunification. All of them, in one way or another, are going to need to have a voice, are going to need to be represented. The Houthis are but one, in the North, a very significant one, but one of those parties.
Who else do you think should be at the table, in addition to the Houthis and the Yemenis?
What is necessary right now is a dialogue across Yemen, an intra-Yemen dialogue that can help support a larger peace negotiation.
And who's going to lead that dialogue?
Well, we're very happy that Martin Griffiths has started his work. We think he needs time and space to show results, and we want to be as supportive as we can across the interagency of his efforts.
Secretary Karim?
I agree with Secretary Satterfield and Mr. Jenkins that you are going to need to bring a number of parties resident inside Yemen together. And then there are also the external players who I think are already in touch with Mr. Griffin.
So does that include Iran? as being one of the players at the table to negotiate?
I've seen precious little evidence that Iran is interested in a negotiated solution in Yemen or in Syria or elsewhere.
And do we think that the Houthis will actually negotiate in good faith if they continue to believe that Iran is going to support them in their activities?
So our policy has been premised on two things. The first, creating that all-encompassing, all-embracing political process in which the Houthis do have a voice and will participate in the outcome as well. The second is to curtail, constrain, mitigate, roll back the extraordinary Iranian support being provided to the Houthis directed at Saudi Arabia. It only emboldens a party not to negotiate as effectively as possible. So we're working on both those lines at once.